Welcome to Confessions with Cynthia, where we explore careers, relationships, and lifestyles of Homo sapiens.
Hello, I'm your host Cynthia, and today's special guest is obsessed with D&D and is dreading marking more assessments for his students. Please welcome Jake.
Hi, I'm Jake, and I'm an ex-retail worker.
Thank you so much for coming along, Jake. So tell us, how did you get into the industry?
I mean, same as anyone really, you're young and you want to earn some money. So high school student, wanted to buy something. Mum and dad said no. So I'm like, well, I'll go and earn my own money. And then that kind of just flowed on from high school to uni to after uni. And then eventually I was like, nah, I'm out of here.
So, just generally, you wanted to start earning money, and obviously there was no, prior 10 years experience on your resume. So you're just like, okay, what's the fastest thing I could apply to? So,
yeah, exactly, which is why it's so silly now that you see in retail stores, experience needed. It's like, no, it's not. Don't lie.
So how did you feel when you started working in, retail at a young age, especially when you were studying? How did you feel the first couple of days?
I mean, it was mostly just nerves. I'm the kind of person that when you put me into a new scenario, I imagine all the worst case scenarios. So I'm like, I'm going to get fired on my first day. I'm going to get stabbed or something like that. It was it wasn't at a rough place. It was just in an area where I was like, I've seen aspects of what this is. But I think, it was just general nerves. You just go, oh God, I don't know what's going to happen. And then after a week, you get into the swing of things and you're like, oh, this is just like going to school, but I have to deal with more arrogant people.
Yeah, that's fair. And then when you were working there for the first couple of weeks, couple of months to your first year, did you find it more comfortable to be in? How was it for you?
Oh, yeah, any kind of situation after you've been there for a bit, you definitely get a lot more comfortable. I think as you continue to work in a specific retail, depending on what aspect it is, you'll probably start to experience the dark sides of that particular industry that you're in. So, for the first week, it really sucks because, when you first start in retail, 9 times out of 10, they give you a little in-training thing so that people who you are serving understand that you're not fully there. But once you make that transitional period, and they usually take you off after a week or so, because they kind of want you to hit the ground running, that's when you start to see oh God, this is the stuff that I've been shielded from as a trainee kind of stuff. So in my first particular retail job, I got nothing but pretty nice customers because I had the in-training thing and I was very not dealing with big groups and stuff like that. So the stress levels were quite low. But then the moment that in-training thing came off, it was oh God, there are so many people and they all have problems.
Yeah, everyone has problems.
Yeah, everyone has problems.
And then were you working there? Obviously, you must have some funny stories in your time during retail. Can you share some of those stories with us?
What rating do you want?
Look, we can bleep out any swears.
It's not so much swearing, it's just... So the one that comes to mind more than anything else is the retail job that I worked the longest in, which was tech-based. Yeah. So people would come in with phones, laptops and stuff like that. It was mostly tech support, but selling things as well. So the amount of times that someone would come to me with their phone and go oh, my phone's not working. And because it was meant to be a teaching moment so we could show them how they could fix it themselves later on. So I'd be okay, so I'd be standing next to them with their phone. They'd unlock their phone and then they'd tell me their issue. I'm like, okay, interesting. And then I would go and open the tabs, and the tab that is there is hardcore porn. And
oh no,
I wish I could say that's only happened once. It probably happened 4 or 5 times.
Oh, that's one too many.
Yeah, and it's not they've given me their phone or their laptop or whatever and they've left. They're standing next to me. So... And it's amazing in that moment how your brain just goes full professional mode. You just go, and then you just swipe it away. And it's always older people. And because, people our age and younger people know how technology works. And I think they're so petrified of that stuff happening. So they check it 1,000 times. I think old people just forget. So that's the stuff that when someone says to me like, oh, retail is hell, and I'm like, yeah, it is, but not in ways you expect, and it can be pretty funny. That's the one that comes to mind the most. It's just like when it first happened, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And by the 5th time, I was like, seriously? Like, I really don't want to see someone's fetishes on a screen.
No, absolutely not. And especially when you're just there by yourself, because I remember you were working sometimes alone, and often like you're just like, you don't have anyone else to be like, help me, like that little help me freaky, like I'm freaked out eye sign. And
yeah, the first couple of times that happened, I just remember going like, this is my life, like
oh no. And then it will forever be a memory. You will never remember that.
I mean, I could probably tell you like all 5 websites.
Oh no. Oh, were they different websites?
No, I think they were all the one. I in all honesty, I can't remember that much. I just remember like the best one was one of the older guys was like, oh, it was a pop-up. I'm like, yeah, sure, it was a pop-up.
Okay.
Like,
sure.
Yeah, sure.
And then apart from like all of that kind of unwanted imagery you had first thing in the morning, what was some of the pet peeves that you had with some of the customers you've served during your time as a retail worker?
Once again, what rating do you want?
Again, we can bleep out.
No. Okay, so across like, because I've worked in like different kinds of retail and hospitality and stuff like that, like in terms of like storefront stuff, the general one that comes across the board is just general rudeness. So one of my biggest pet peeves would be, because you're told to be polite and be very welcoming and make sure that they feel warm and safe in your store. So you would be like, hi there, thanks for coming in today. My name's Jake. They would just say, yeah, I need this, or I want this. It's like, okay, so I've just said, hi, how are you? My name's Jake. And they just go, I need this. And it's so frustrating because you just go, seriously, it takes 2 seconds to just say, oh, I'm good, thanks, how are you? Or, oh, yeah, nice to meet you. Some people just completely, you just turn into a robot to them. That's probably like my biggest general pet peeve. And then like specific pet peeve would definitely be, once again, like the tech job, is people would come in with a specific question. And then I'd give them the answer, and then they would go, no, that's not right, or no, that's wrong, or they would just not listen to it. And I'm not some all-knowing tech guru. Like, if I didn't know the answer to the question, like some people came in asking really specific questions. I'm like, look, I'm sorry, I don't know. You're going to have to like speak to an actual professional. If I knew the answer, I gave them the answer, and then they would go, no, I know better. And I'm like, okay, so why are you here then? If you're an expert, like, can't you figure it out for yourself? Or they would go and do something like that I told them not to do, consequences, and then they come to me and blame me, or they ask me to fix it. I'm like, I can't. Like, yeah, I don't know. There are so many pet peeves now that I'm thinking back on it, and I'm just like, oh God, I'm so glad I'm out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously you've worked through those, and you kind of understood like the general vibe of how to approach customers when they ask you specific questions, especially when it's something like you can't help them with. You'd be very upfront with them and say, look, I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
So you'd tell them to look for someone that actually is really in-depth with knowledge and professional, which is good of you.
Yeah. My biggest pet peeve is just that kind of stuff where they don't treat you like you're a human who knows what you're talking about because you're in this job. And in some circumstances, they might not know what they're talking about. But in my case, I'd been doing that job for like 5+ years. So I was like, I know what I'm talking about. And they're like, oh, I heard differently. And I'm like, you probably heard differently from your friend who went into a tech store once and told you, and you're misremembering everything. But no, okay, don't believe me. Go and do what you think is best. And then I'll see you in a week complaining about the issue. So yeah, that was my biggest pet peeve. Probably because I knew it was going to make more work for me later down the line, because it wasn't a one and done thing. I'm like, this person's going to come back and it's just going to lead to more frustration and zero money. So yeah, definitely biggest pet peeve specifically for that industry. You don't really get that so much in like cafes and like quick transactional stuff, because the most that you'll get there is just the rudeness, which you can kind of just brush off. Like, you learn to just whatever.
You're listening to Confessions with Cynthia, here with Jake. Exactly. And then through all of that and the difficult moments of your job, what was some of like the moments that helped you grow as not only a worker, but like as a person in general, that helps you still to this day?
Like specific moments, like specific events, or like as in just the overall experience?
Oh, both.
I can't really think of like a singular specific moment. The only one that comes to mind is like I had one guy come in and say that line of like, I earn more in an hour than you do in a day. And I just looked at him and I'm like, you're probably right, because you're like 30 years older than me and I am like still in high school. Like, of course, like that's how the way the world works, dude. Like, I think that moment, I remember when that happened, I think I started to very much just not care what people said. So, you know, when people came in and boasting about stuff, like I assumed every customer that came in didn't know what they were talking, and they were lying, because it helps you in dealing with everything. Because sometimes people will come in with what they think is the world's biggest problem. You treat them like you just go, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm going to dial this down to the very first setting. Okay, so just to make sure I've got this right, you have an issue with your laptop's microphone. Yes. And then they're like, oh, yeah, that's the issue. I'm like, okay, let me have a look. And then once you boil it down to that very first thing, you're like, oh, it's just a setting. Push one button. There you go. All done. So that was probably like that moment of that guy treating me like I was nothing. Like, oh, you earn nothing. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. And I think that was a very big turning moment for me. Like, oh, customers are awful people. and when you come to that realization, I think you are able to kind of handle any situation, because you can boil it down to like the easiest thing and just go, this is how it's resolved. And then like as a whole, I'd probably say like retail, as corny as it sounds, I think resilience. You just learn how to mask your emotions. You learn how to create like two different personas. Like you've got your retail work, or just your work persona, and then your actual persona. So you go in, you'll get verbally abused, you'll get told awful things, you'll have a really hard day, and you'll just be able to go, yep, whatever. And after you close the store, you're like, sweet, I'm done, moving on. Those are the two things, like specifically in retail, like that moment with that guy and awful people, that helps you just frame how you deal with all customers very easily. And then, yeah, the resilience and masking stuff, I'd say.
That's really good to hear. I'm really glad that you've carried that over still to this day, because you are one of the most calmest and like, just chill people. Like, you know that things aren't always as bad as they seem, and I've seen that, and usually you're the one calming the situation down.
Yeah, that's externally. Internally, I'm freaking out. Like I said, it's about masking.
Yeah.
So you're able to put on that persona of like, everything's fine. And in my current job, you need to do that too. So I think, trust me, when you say that, I'm one of the one calming it down. It's like calm outside, but in my head, it's like a maelstrom of anxiety just waiting to explode.
And then with all of this, tell me your side of the story when you hit a roadblock in your retail career, because I know you were studying at the time. So when did you feel like, it's kind of like my time to go?
Okay, well, yeah, so not in high school, because like I said, you're just doing that for the money, and obviously you've got the HSC to worry about, so you've got other things. And similar to uni, so when I did my bachelor's degree, it was the same kind of attitude. It's just, well, this is just a job to make sure that I can go out. I was fortunate enough to be living with a bank of mum and dad, so I wasn't paying rent, I wasn't paying for food, so mostly the money I was earning at my job was just so I could go out and do things or buy things that I wanted. I was very clear, like, I don't want to stay in retail. It's just a thing that is convenient and earns money. The moment for me was after I finished my master's degree. So the context is like, after I finished my bachelor's degree, I kind of got really lazy and did nothing for a year. Like, I just took a gap year where I just did nothing. And then when I started working at my new retail job, I got very comfortable there. And that's the big thing that I would just say is, for a lot of people, if you don't have a particular drive or an overall goal, it gets very comfortable in retail jobs because, one, you don't take your work home with you. Like, you know, at retail, like as soon as that store closes, and you've closed the till and all that stuff, your job's done. You don't have to think about it. The rest of the day is yours. A lot of other jobs aren't like that, where you actually have to take stuff home or think about things, or you ruminate on stuff. So for me, it took about 2 years working at that tech job. And when I was like, you know what, I don't think I really want to stay here anymore, or I don't see myself going into this profession or going into this industry or like taking over or moving up or whatever. So I went back to uni to study teaching. So I did my master's degree. And I was still working on the side, and I was doing like 5 days of study, 2 days of work, which was hell. That's one thing. Make sure you have a day off. Like, yes. People will tell you, like I know you told me and other people, and I've told you as well, because I know you've done the 7-day work shuffle as well.
I don't recommend it, folks.
No. And it's that thing where you think like, oh yeah, I can do it. And then you actually don't realize how much it wears you down. So make sure you have a day off, 1 day off. At the very least, you need to have 1 day where you can just decompress. So after I finished my master's degree, I was all set to like go, right, I've got opportunities now. I'm going to earn more money. I'm going to go into a field that I'm interested in. So I was going to go tell my boss, I'm like, hey, here's my 2 weeks notice, even though I didn't really need to, because I had kind of shifted to casual, because I started doing casual teaching. So I was like casual. The moment, I think it was like the week before I was about to tell him, COVID hit. And I remember having this internal monologue of like, well, I can quit my job and go full casual teaching, but a lot of schools are shutting down, and I don't think that's going to be like a sustainable income for the time being. So I ended up staying at that job for a longer period of time and doing some casual teaching, but most of it was there. My roadblock was like, once COVID was finished, once I realized I had an out, COVID was done-ish. I got opportunity to teach at this excellent school that I loved. Did that for a term. I loved it. They liked me, and they said, hey, do you want to make it more permanent? I said, absolutely. So I ended up saying to my boss, hey, just so you know, this is probably like my 2 weeks. I've got a better job opportunity. And I think it was just, I was stubborn because I was like, I can do everything. So I was teaching from Monday to Friday, and then I was working at this store on Saturday and Sunday. So 7-day work week, just absolute death. I was miserable. I was doing it. I don't know why I was doing it on reflection. Like looking back, I'm like, why? I don't know why. I think it's because I hate saying no. And my boss at the time was very low staffed because of the whole COVID situation.
You're listening to Confessions with Cynthia. Here with Jake.
I had to rip the Band-Aid off and go,
yeah.
You know, I know you told me and other friends told me and my parents told me, and they're like, you can't work these 2 jobs. It's not sustainable, and it's not. And, you know, I think the thing is like everyone can say to themselves, well, it's not sustainable for some people. It's sustainable for me. You're lying. Like it. Maybe in the short run, like I think it's kind of inevitable that everyone does like a full work, like a Monday to Sunday, you know, I think everyone kind of faces that at one point in their lives, but you can't do it full time. And I think that was the moment where I'm like, I need to drop this, because it was just the amount of money that I was earning at that job was not equivalent to how much mental anguish I was dealing with. So I was like, no, I need to drop it. So I dropped it. And I said, maybe I'll go back in school holidays. I have never gone back. Not because like it was bad. It was just, it's nice having holidays.
Yeah, of course. And obviously you deserve it, especially with the demanding job that you have now. And for this, I know that you left, I think it was sometime last year, was it?
Was it?
Yeah, it was last year.
Oh, God.
Because I think you... Because you worked like the busy Christmas period, and
yeah,
you told me the good news that you got like the full-time job offer.
That's right. Yeah. So I was still working at that store term 1. So it'd probably be around this time, 2022, that I ended up leaving. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, because I love the basically...
It's all haze.
I know. The last couple of years have been just mushed together. And obviously when good news happens, like we celebrated it. So that's how I remember it, was that you gave us the good news, you got a permanent role, at this new job, and we were so excited for you. And then when you finally left the retail job, I feel like I felt that you had that relief where you had your time back.
Yeah, it was mostly like in leaving the retail job, it was just the fact that I had my weekends, so I was actually able to relax, because I think cannot understate how important it is that you at least have one day where you don't do anything. Well, not don't do anything, you just recover, and how you recover is how you recover. But yeah,
and that is so important.
Yeah.
And with saying all of this, what was the positive aspects that still resonate with you from your experience in retail work?
See, now it's the opposite problem. I'm I can't think of anything. No, it's kind of that human thing, isn't it? We remember all the bad things, but we don't really. You have to kind of. We remember all the bad things, but you have to force yourself to remember the good things. Look, the best stuff that I had in retail was some customers. I had this really lovely lady when I was working at a cafe. She would always give me 20-cent, 50-cent coins. Because it was a very small hole in the wall kind of cafe, and we just had a couple of tables. And whenever she would have a coffee, she would sit there and leave 20 and 50-cent coins on the plate. She'd always go, "That's for you," and it's.
Aww.
I think just that kind of attitude, positivity, because she would always pair it with "have a lovely day" and stuff like that. So she was really lovely, small things like that. And then, I had other really good customers, returning customers. I think that's the thing, probably the best thing about a retail job is if you don't particularly like the industry that you're in, if you love being a barista, or you love serving food, or you love tech or something like that, then I think that'll be the positive thing. I was never super into any of that stuff. It was more a job than anything else. So all of my positive experiences come back to the good customers who would come in. But if you love the industry that you're in, it's a good entry point. But yeah, probably she's the one I think of first when you say good customer. And there are a couple of others that were returning customers. I got some one-off customers that were great, and they gave really big tips, or they came back and gave gifts and stuff like that. But that's a fleeting kind of, oh yeah, cool. And almost in a way you kind of feel like you deserve it because you did a lot of work with that one customer. She was the one where I wasn't doing much. I was getting her coffee and something to eat, just putting it on a table, and she was actually kind of just a positive person. So I think, yeah.
It's those little gestures that kind of show their appreciation of you and the work that you do.
Yeah, honestly, people who go into retail stores, I said it earlier, just say, "How's your day going?" A lot of, a retail worker will either be "Oh yeah, fine," and not care, or they'll be "Oh yeah, bit rough, but yeah, thanks for asking." It'll actually break it up a bit. You'd be surprised how much their demeanor will shift. If you walk into a retail store and you've got a stone-faced person at the register asking "How's your day been?" You'll notice that immediately a lot of them will just start to go "Oh, it's been a bit rough, but it's not too bad. How's your..." It opens the conversation so much better than "I need this." It's okay, yeah. You're an asshole.
No, definitely. And for people that are looking to get into the industry today, what is your one piece of advice to them?
Oh, one piece?
Yeah,
only one?
One big one that is a must.
To get into the industry, or just
Just advice in general. If someone said, "Hey, I'm looking to go into the retail industry today," what kind of advice would you like to give them?
Yeah, no, one piece of advice is really hard. Okay, generally I would say know your value and know your worth. I say that because a lot of people who end up going into retail are younger, and it's their first job experience. For most people, I would say, when you're at high school or university, or you've just finished education and you need some money, retail is kind of the default that most people go to. And because it's your first job, I think people, not all of them, I had some great managers, but a lot of managers will take advantage of that, and they'll make you think that you're worth less or worth more than what you are. How I say that, I mean, it's more along the lines of it's like a coin. So do your work, do it well, but don't kill yourself over it. Don't feel that you need to stay back every day for an extra hour, 2 hours cleaning and everything. You know, that should be a part of your salary, like, and your hours allocated. You know, that's not a expectation. You know, get there early, like a couple of minutes early, and leave on time. That's your worth. You know, you are worth it as a person, and I think a lot of retail jobs can make you forget that. That's where you need to know your worth. And knowing your worth is also like looking up salary, wages, award rates, overtime. What are your rights as an employee? Spend some time like going, how much should I be getting paid at this job level? Some people don't know that when you enter retail, like depending on your age, you actually get paid different levels. So look at that. How long have you been working at the job? Like, there are all these little things that differ from site to site, job to job, industry to industry that you actually should spend the time researching. Because at the end of the day, you need to enter that job knowing that they are hiring you and they're paying you because you are valuable to them. So do it well, but don't kill yourself over it.
And just note the balance. Like, make sure you have rest in your weekends.
Yes, definitely. I cannot stress that enough. Like, you know, at some point, you and I have both worked 2 jobs.
Yeah. It's a bit hard.
It's hard, and financial situations can mean that sometimes you feel like that's the only option, which is fair enough. But I think it can just turn into your whole life. And, you know, looking back on it, I got those retail jobs because I wanted money. And then I would buy the stuff, or I would go out and do things, or I would travel. That's what you kind of need to remind yourself you're doing it for. Like, if you are in a retail job purely because you want the money, set yourself a goal and go like, right, this is my goal. You can start to blur the line, and then your whole life becomes devoted to, well, like any job. Like, you know, the job that I have now demands that I kind of devote myself to it to a degree. But I think, yeah, it's really tricky. Look for opportunities as well. Like, if you want to move up in that company, like if you're working for a chain, keep your finger on the pulse of when job opportunities pop up, like higher up. Having experience in that industry is invaluable, more so than an education in some cases, I would argue. Yeah.
Like you said, again, just value yourself, you know, just know your rights.
Yeah, know your rights. Like, know your rights, know your worth, know your value. That job should not be your life. Like, you know, you've got friends, family, interests and stuff. That should be your life. So don't be afraid to take sick days. Don't be afraid to take holiday leave. Like, that's what it's there for if you're on a contract and you're not casual. Try not to get too comfortable, like, in a job. Retail work can get very easy. And when you've got a steady flow of money, it's very easy to go, whatever. More than anything, just know your value, know your worth.
That's really well said. Well, thank you again, Jake, for joining us today and sharing part of your story with us. This wraps up our episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.